I am so grateful to welcome you all, of always, and my dear friend, Dr. Amii Steele. We met Dr. Amii in 2014 when we were in Levine, in Charlotte, North Carolina, at Levine Children's Hospital. And she made such an impact in our journey and in Cole's experience and mine, and really met us at the very worst time of our long journey, and was so supportive that it was just a no-brainer for me that if there was anyone that I could get professionally, especially, to come and visit the group and share her experience and her wisdom, she was the first I asked. So I'm just so grateful that she said yes, because she is a very busy professional and a mom. And so I'm just so grateful for your time today, Amii. And I think you are much more experienced in doing this than I am. So do you want to just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're going to do today?
Sure. So first off, I so appreciate that welcome and count it a privilege to be speaking to this group. I think presenting and talking with parents and caregivers and patients is by far my favorite thing that I get to do. And I really count it as a privilege to learn, to hopefully share some things that might be useful or helpful, but also to hear things that you all are needing, hopefully to inform my clinical care and all my colleagues' clinical care too. So I like that you said that I was a little bit more experienced with this. I am, however, not really with Google Meets. So the caveat of this is that when I share, I do have some slides. When I share those, I won't be able to see you for some reason. So just know you can use the hand raise feature. You can put things into a chat. My goal is to share some information, to do some experiential things that hopefully will provide just like a brief pause or some care into your day. I thank you for just taking this time and investing in yourself, because I know you're all really, really busy and have about a bazillion other things that you could be doing. And then I'll close the slides and then I can see you again and we can really have a discussion. So my goal, maybe to talk for 20-30 minutes, and then for us all to hopefully talk. I can answer questions, provide clarification, anything like that. So I'll go ahead and share and make sure that you guys can see it. I think when I first share, you will see like a little random view, and then I can make it larger for you all. Okay, can you guys see that title slide? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I can hear you. Great. I was like, at least I can hear something, but I can't see anything else. So I apologize for that. I didn't know Google Meets kind of had that. Actually, I see one more thing that I might see if this helps me at all. Toggle camera is probably not what I want. Nope. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. Okay, so again, thank you for this opportunity, and Laura for the invite and to speak to this group. I want to start by just acknowledging that you're here because you probably love someone deeply and are caring for them in some way. And this space today is really for support and not fixing. There's no right way or wrong way to feel. And I also want you to know that you're not alone. Number one, you have other people on the call, even though I can't see you right now. I saw that there were little tiles popping up. I know you have a really large community online. And so I wanted to start off by just putting those couple of things forth just as we jump into this. I always like to start a presentation. Number one, Laura kind of told you who I am. I'm a pediatric psychologist. I've been working with patients with significant medical conditions for 20 years at this point, and predominantly pediatric cancer and blood disorders throughout my career. Like Laura mentioned, I think, offline and out of the professional world, I really am a strong advocate for mental wellness and people taking care of their mental health and reducing stigma surrounded by mental health, because in my mind and in lots of evidence out there and data, there is no health without mental health. Our brain's up here, but it's connected to the whole rest of our body. We'll talk a little bit about that. Again, I mentioned maybe I'll talk for 20 or 30 minutes. We'll do some experiential things together if that feels comfortable for you. If it doesn't, you don't have to. But I like to kind of give a little bit of an overview. So the overview of where we're going to go today and where we're heading is that, many times as a caregiver with a child or a loved one with cancer or DSRCT, you're living through an unimaginable sort of situation. And I want to acknowledge that level of uncertainty that you experience is quite high. And often there can be a trauma response to just being in a situation like this. And that's not a weakness. That's literally a biological, physical response. I want to talk a bit about grounding and what that means. Like out there in pop culture, we hear that a lot, but I want to talk about what it means and how it might apply and how it might be helpful. Certainly, we can't talk about our mental wellness and what we do without talking about emotions. And then I really want to talk about what caring for oneself actually looks like. Like bubble baths and candles are great, but that is really peripheral and surface level sorts of things. And then, like I mentioned, going into a Q&A, and then I have a resource handout that I was going to email to Laura that she can share with your community as well. That'll have some of the things that I go over today. Everybody still hear me? We're good so far?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thank you. It's really like I'm a little blind here. I hate that I can't see you all, but okay. So let's talk a little bit about the reality of caregiving. So number one, I think I really like to talk to anyone who will listen to me about the fact that multiple emotions can exist at one time. And I think as a caregiver, as a parent, love and fear, we find out that these things can really coexist and do very often. Strength and vulnerability and feeling, broken or hopeless or like you don't know what to do can coexist. Hope and uncertainty can coexist at the same time. And I think I can't talk about hope without talking about Cole and Laura a little bit here, because, I think as much as it was so kind that she said that I, walked with them through some really intense things, I learned so much from Laura, and certainly so much from Cole, and things that I carry with me in my work with all of my other patients. And I think they really embodied this idea of this hope always, even through this absolute uncertainty. Our hope for whatever we're hoping for can change, certainly, but the hope can be there. And I think, certainly that's something that I carry with me. So I want to just normalize here the complexity of emotions that can exist, how caregivers often say that they just feel confused by conflicting emotions. And, a lot of times parents and caregivers are coming to me and they're like, yeah, this all makes sense. But what do I do to just like keep going? Like I have to keep going. I have to keep showing up. I have to survive through this and take care of my child and advocate for them and manage. And so what do I do? So hopefully we can talk through some things that you all can do. So grounding. So what is grounding? Grounding is really an effort to calm our nervous system, right? So our nervous system, and I can't get through a presentation without talking about brain and biology a little bit, so humor me here, but our nervous system is there, right? It takes in feedback from the whole world around us, right? And it communicates from our extremities and everywhere up to our brain, and then our brain communicates back out to our nervous system, and there's this amazing sort of dance that happens here. But with that is that when we're in an environment or a stressful situation, our nervous system is getting like all this feedback that can be super overwhelming that it sends to our brain, and then these biological responses can happen. And so grounding is an attempt to kind of calm down and bring our nervous system just to kind of turn it down a few notches, okay? And so grounding is a very physical thing and can be a biological process. However, again, in like lay culture, pop culture, we might think, sometimes people might be like, this is so woo-woo, like what is this? Like, is this really a science-backed thing? Yes, absolutely. Grounding can also really reduce overwhelm. And I think how it can help us is that it can create moments of steadiness. So grounding, by trying to ground your body, you're not like fixing the situation that you're in, but you are controlling what you can and helping your body to tolerate whatever situation that you're in at that moment. And so what we hope to avoid is complete numbness or shutdown by giving our nervous system a little bit more steadiness and a little bit more resiliency to kind of manage whatever's being thrown at us, okay? So now I'd like to kind of transition us into a little bit of the experiential part of this. I find no matter what sort of professional talk I go to or any talk in the community, like I like to hear about the information and then I like to experience or actually do something with it to like experience what we're talking about here. So I actually do. Okay. So you guys see this kind of outdoor nature picture, hopefully?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So I am going to invite you. This will take about, let's say, 3 minutes. Really, all that I'm asking you to do is to either, whichever feels comfortable and approachable to you, kind of look at the screen and listen to my voice. Or if it feels comfortable to you, you can close your eyes and listen to my voice. I'm just going to guide you through about a 3-minute guided grounding exercise. Some people call this guided meditation, guided imagery, things like that. The intention is to ground, bring you to the present moment, and hopefully settle your nervous system a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to go ahead and take a moment to settle into a comfortable position. Again, if it feels safe or approachable for you, you can allow your eyes to gently close, soften your gaze, look out into your surroundings, or look at the screen at the nature scene. Just begin by simply noticing that you're here right now in this moment. You've chosen to be here. You're taking this minute for yourself. There's nothing that you need to fix, nothing that you need to solve in these few minutes, just a few minutes to breathe. Bring your attention to your breath, not changing it, just noticing it. The air as it moves in to your body, maybe through your nostrils, maybe through your mouth. And the air as it moves out. Maybe you feel the air in your nose, your chest, or your belly. Just let your breath be your anchor, something steady that you can trust in. Now imagine yourself in a place in nature that feels calm or comforting to you. It might be a quiet beach, a forest trail, a mountain view, or simply sitting under a tree. Try to picture the details of this place gently. Colors that are there, the light, maybe the textures that are around you. Notice the sounds in this place, perhaps waves, perhaps wind through trees or birds in the distance. Let this place hold you for a moment. As you breathe in, imagine drawing in the steadiness of this place, perhaps the calmness. As you breathe out, imagine releasing just a small layer of tension. You don't have to let go of everything, just a tiny bit. Inhale the grounding of the place you're in. Exhale and soften. Inhale, grounding, support. Exhale and release just a bit. So if your mind has wandered or begins to wander, that's okay. Gently guide it back to your breath or to the place in nature that you're picturing. No judgment, just return. And now, if it feels comfortable to you, bring one hand to your heart or leave your hands where they are, anywhere that may feel. Remind yourself silently or softly, I am here. I am doing the best I can. I can take this one moment. Take one more slow, steady breath in and a long, gentle breath out. When you're ready, begin to bring your awareness back to the room, back to the place that you're in. Maybe wiggle your fingers or toes. If you ended up closing your eyes, you can gently open your eyes and reorient yourself. You can return to this breath, to this place, anytime you need, even if just for a few seconds. Remember that you're carrying so much, and even in the midst of it, you're allowed to pause. So I'm going to try something. I'm such like a people person, you all, that I'm really going to try to see if I can figure out another solution to this. So that I can actually see you. I'm really my apologies. Is that super distracting to view it like this, or is that okay?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
I don't think it's problematic from my view. Anyone else?
People are like, okay, all right.
Yeah,
There's
thumbs
really that like I can't see anyone.
Is
Okay.
that better for your view? Can you see? A lot of the participants have cameras off anyways.
Oh, okay. And that's okay too. You can totally do that. Whatever feels comfortable for you all. I might try this just for a couple and kind of see how it goes. Okay. I do want to pause, and this is part of like why I wanted to see people. I do want to pause for just 1 second and invite anyone. Again, this is totally optional. Invite anyone if you have any feedback, any thoughts, any reflections, anything on what that experience was for you that we just did together, if you did it.
Is there anyone that wants to jump in and give feedback? We've got about
I can.
12 people here.
Awesome.
Me?
Yeah.
That.
No, I went back to, my parents have a lot of land, and I always loved going through the woods, and you can smell the fresh hemlocks in the spring and just feel, the twigs crackling under your feet, the dogs running through the woods. So I went back to that space and it made me feel good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Just the smell of the hemlocks and just, yeah. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thank
sharing.
you, Dee. Eva?
Yeah, hi. I mean, for me, it's not like I'm like to nature person, but for me, it's reminding very much like just doing something with my hands, like the embroidery, or my brother loves Lego and all kinds of the modeling and things like that. And it's for me like this something similar, not just with like the nature and focusing on the body and things like that, but yet when you are focusing only on that one thing that you need to finish, it's giving me, it's kind of like the same vibes.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
I found out that like very hard time to like imagine nature and things like that. So maybe if you are not like so, I don't know, empathic and esoteric person, maybe somebody will gonna found useful to try at least one of like the handy hobbies or something like that.
Absolutely. What you're describing, Eva, thank you for sharing that. What you're describing is just being mindfully present in whatever it is that you're doing. You're focusing on that one thing. And if using your hands to do something or to hold something or to ground yourself in that way through like something tactile or through touch, wonderful. You want to do what is good for you. And the more options that you can give yourself for how to ground, the better, right? Because maybe closing your eyes and picturing nature is not doing it for you that day. That is okay. Thank you. Valerie?
Val,
Yeah,
go ahead.
as soon as you put that picture up, Amy, I could feel a sense of relaxation, and it reminded me how much, for me, nature is huge. I can go, and if I look at the mountains or the sky or the ocean, if I just go into a place in nature, I just feel like it's bigger, like than anything that we are or is. And I look at the trees and I think, well, they've been here a lot longer. Or, the ocean, I don't know, there's some kind of sense of there's something bigger than us, and it's comforting, I guess. So that was a perfect picture to choose. And I have found the other thing that really works for me is music too. I mean, it can bring up a lot of different emotions, but it can also dissipate some emotions.
For sure. For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. And actually, looking at photos of nature can have similar calming effects to actually being out in nature. So often I encourage people who are stuck in a hospital or a clinic room or things like that. If nature is something that is calming for you, or you visited certain places that you just love and you remember the feeling of you being there and that feeling was positive for you or even neutral, to have an album on your phone or your iPad or something and look at those, right? Because just staring at them for, I forget like how long, but even just like viewing the photos, you experience a similar calming effect. They've done research on that, which is pretty awesome.
That's great that you brought that up, because right now my son Josh is not that well, and I didn't even think about that, but that's what we could do, is look at pictures of nature too, because it would be
back in the day, before everybody had everything at their fingertips, we used to print out like 8.5 by 11 photos of nature and like laminate them and like have kids, like look at them and like flip through them in the ICU or wherever else, just to kind of, or like have something up. And now obviously with digital things, there's a lot of different ways to maybe bring nature to you. But yeah, certainly it can have a calming impact. Did I miss anyone who wanted to share? I wanted to be sure I didn't miss anyone before I kind of keep going. Thank you all for doing that. I'm gonna okay. You guys can still see my screen, right? or see the little, okay. I have a couple things going up here on my screen, you all. Oh, that's not good. Because when I move this, it moves it for you all. Okay. Laura gave me a lot of credit for saying I was more experienced with this. My apologies. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about trauma. I mentioned earlier that trauma is really a physiological or your body's response and not a weakness. Ongoing stress impacts your mind and body quite significantly. When you are in a very uncertain and stressful situation, especially, it can be very brief or it can be very long-term, perhaps as a caregiver, you know, depending on your journey and things that you're going through, that takes a toll and impacts your mind and your body. And so common responses to prolonged experiences of stress are things like hypervigilance, which is really just this being on edge all the time, or this like on high alert, waiting for the shoe to drop, you know, just this like maybe a heightened startle response, things like that. Likewise, complete numbness can occur, or going in and out of being hypervigilant or numb. Irritability and exhaustion are also very common. So with chronic uncertainty, I'm telling you guys things that certainly you know, but there's no clear roadmap often. You have to do constant decision making, which can be very, very difficult and can cause a lot of fatigue mentally and physically. And then you're often living on alert, hence the hypervigilance that may come. And so you're living through all of that, experiencing loss of control or trying to really hold tightly to the things that you do control. Emotional overload can happen. And then sometimes you can barely be focused on or try to focus on this day-by-day survival and what that looks like. Those are things that the literature would say or research would say about what parents of kids with really serious illnesses are going through. I want to gently reframe that and give us another way of thinking about it. One, which I've said over and over, the trauma response that can occur is your body's physical response to the situation that you're in. And it's absolutely not a weakness. It's a physiologic response. It doesn't happen to everyone and it doesn't have to, but it is a physiologic response. Two, you are adapting to something incredibly hard. So having self-compassion and acknowledging that is really, really important. The other thing is really thinking about strength as not constant positivity, and really just focusing on getting through. And it does not have to be this constant positivity that may come from outside influences. Okay, so let's it's a little bit small. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about emotions that may be really common that caregivers and parents are experiencing. And these are just a few, but I want to also normalize that emotions we talked a little bit about earlier, you can have competing or maybe conflicting emotions, and those are okay. You can hold two things at once, two things can be true at once. All emotions are okay. Maybe how we cope or respond to all emotions, we could do that in maybe healthier ways than others, but all emotions are okay. Fear, anger, guilt, hope, grief, and joy are some of the most common ones that parents and caregivers are bringing up and talking about. The other thing that's really okay is emoting or expressing the emotions, right? So crying, needing space, feeling overwhelmed. I want to just normalize that this is all okay and a part of a process of managing this ongoing uncertainty, this ongoing stress. All of that is normal for the situation that you are in. I think I wouldn't be a very good mental health professional if I did not also acknowledge that pre-existing mental or physical health does matter. If we already are struggling with a mental health condition and then go into a very stressful time as caregiver of a child with cancer, then the impact on us may be more significant or severe. Intense reactions are often also very valid, intense emotional reactions. And the thing to remember is that professional help can be really important and can be very useful to us if needed. Okay, I think understanding that you're not alone and we don't have to do this alone is also really important. Ways to build community and gather support can look different for everyone, but therapy can be very helpful. Psychotropic medications, if indicated, support groups, whether that be online or in person, reaching out to different members of a medical team for support, like a social worker, a psychologist, a therapist, someone on the palliative care team, and then building your network of trusted people. You may feel when you get thrust into this caregiving world and you're in like a completely different world than your friends or family may be in, it can feel very isolating, and that is really common. But looking for a trusted person or someone in this group that you've identified that you can go to or talk with who gets it can also be very helpful. And then maybe going to that friend or family member when you need a break from just talking about all the ins and outs of the stuff that you're in, and having that balance can be nice as well. All right, so let's talk about how caring for ourselves is usually the very last thing on the list. But caring for yourself is not selfish. It's actually not optional either, because if you are not taking care of yourself, you cannot show up very well for very long as a caregiver. Many of you might be shaking your heads or being, agreeing with this, because eventually something's got to give. And typically that's you if you're not taking care of yourself. Caring for yourself is absolutely essential for sustainability, right? And I think a really nice way of reframing this or thinking about it in a different way is saying that self-care is necessary. It's not indulgent. Okay. So it is necessary for our survival, necessary for us to be a good caregiver, a good enough caregiver, show up for our families, and not indulgent. Okay. So what does self-care actually look like? I kind of, made a little poke earlier with saying, it's not bubble bath and candles. I mean, if you like a bubble bath and candles, do it. However, self-care needs to be, in order for it to be sustainable, in order for us to do it, small, realistic, and flexible, right? So just like that nature scene, if that's not for you, if that's not realistic, if that doesn't really help you, then that's okay. There are probably a million different ways of coping with things or taking care of oneself, and we need a toolbox of things that we can choose from depending on where we're at, what might work for us right then, what we have the bandwidth for, etc. So small, realistic, and flexible things for caring for oneself are how I like to look at it. Caring for oneself is also not all or nothing, right? We can do small bits, we can do, and I'll kind of talk through some specifics, and it also, caring for yourself doesn't have to look like perfection, because perfect really doesn't exist. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the domains of self-care. So there's all different ways that we need to care for ourselves, but there's really the physical part. And I like to think about that first and foremost. And one of the first things to go when you're a caregiver, I feel like, is that physical part. You're like, sleep, what's that? I'm in a hospital, or I'm in a clinic, or I'm up doing research at night to try to find this clinical trial, or I'm emailing these doctors and I'm doing all this. Like, what sleep, right? Sleep is so important. Like, if I could give you anything about something that you could do to take care of yourself, work on your sleep. And I talk to literally every patient and family member that I meet about this, no matter what sort of thing they're working through. But if we are not sleeping, then everything else is harder. Our emotional regulation is harder. I mean, everything. And so, our compassion, our ability to reason, everything. So if you take anything out of this, one thing that I would give you or leave you with would be, how can you either improve the quality of your sleep, improve the number of minutes or hours that you're sleeping, and how can you work a little bit on your sleep? And so that is a huge, huge, huge thing. How we're nourishing our body, also really important, how we're fueling our body, and then if we're moving it and how we're moving it. Because all of those really can support our emotional health, how we show up with our family, how we show up for the patient, our child. And so that's really kind of the groundwork, is the physical health. And again, that's the first thing to go, because we're pushing it to the limit, right? Like, we're pushing it because we need to show up for someone else. And we will not be able to sustain that for very long over time. And I don't know who to attribute this to, but it was like, if you are not resting your body will force you to rest. And really the way I think about that is, if you are pushing so hard, then eventually you're going to get sick, or your body's going to force you into some sort of rest. And I see that time and time again, in small ways, maybe with getting a cold or whatever, and then in large ways, sometimes with other sorts of illnesses. Okay. Emotional support and ways to take care of yourself, certainly acknowledging emotions, saying, this is hard. I'm feeling these sorts of ways, seeking support, ways of taking care of you. And I split out emotional and mental, because some of this is, emotions are not good or bad. They are what they are. They come up. We don't necessarily control them. Mental things with like thoughts and boundaries that we may have, we have a bit more control over thoughts. We don't have as much control over emotions. People can talk to me about that, but they just come and they change in intensity and they go and they come. But our thoughts, we do have a little bit more control over. And so that's kind of why I separated those out. That's a way that we can kind of also take care of ourselves. And then social, certainly, because those are more external things. And then our own spiritual health is a way of taking care of ourselves as well. Okay. So let's talk about micro moments of self-care. Okay. 1 to 5 minute resets really can have positive impact on our overall health. It does not have to be 30 minutes of meditation. It can be, and that would be lovely, but it doesn't have to be. 1 to 5 minute resets multiple times a day can really impact and be positive. Small actions matter, and they build on one another. And so certain really quick micro moments might be stepping outside and focusing on one of your senses, right? So even if you're not a nature person, you can, being outdoors, getting fresh air, being outdoors has some really significant positive impacts on our mental health and our physical health. So stepping outside and maybe listening to what you hear, or stepping outside and just focusing on what you can see and just being aware of it for a minute, 2 minutes. Drinking water slowly, mindfully drinking a beverage, savoring coffee, whatever that might be, instead of just guzzling it down to try to stay awake because you didn't sleep last night. I've done that many times. Maybe taking 3 deep breaths or doing a guided breathing or something like that. Those are all some micro moment ideas. So I will leave this here, and I'm recognizing time, and I want to make sure I can allow for questions. But I after this, you might want to consider or think about what helps you personally feel even 5% better. What might help you feel even 5% better? And maybe reflect on that, maybe write it down, maybe put it in a note on your phone, and then think about that. And maybe you don't know yet, so you try some of these micro moments on for size and see what you might think. Let's think about and talk about a couple of other really simple grounding tools. So I walked you through that nature thing where you listen to my voice and maybe try to do some imagery and picture something. But There are some other really simple grounding techniques. Some of you might be familiar. You can use this for yourself or anyone in your family. There's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 using your senses. And so that's, looking around and naming 5 things that you see, 4 things that you can hear. Let me see if I can do all my senses on the fly. 3 things that you can touch or feel, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. And the key here is not to really be like, what is it, the 5 that I do? What is it, the 3? What is it? No. It's just bringing you back into the present moment. There's no right or wrong way. Let's say you only get to the 5 things that you can see. That's okay. What you're doing is you're bringing your mind and body back to the present moment instead of perhaps into the anxiety swirl that may be happening in the moment in your mind. Hand on your heart breathing, right? Hand on your belly breathing, or you just feel your belly go out and in can be helpful. Maybe providing yourself with a coping or a comforting statement, like this is a hard moment, and focusing on your breath. You can also, instead of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can kind of do this, and I like to do this with my patients as well, like focus on naming things of colors of the rainbow that you might see in your surroundings. Again, it's bringing you out of your head and out of your thoughts to the present moment. So, what's red that I see? What's orange? And you just go through the colors, or you just choose one color. Anything that's blue here, what do I see? And you start naming out loud or in your head, either way. And then focusing on a temperature. Often this works really well with cold things, and cold things are pretty accessible. So getting a piece of ice maybe and holding it, running your hands under cold water, splashing your face with cold water. What does this do? It brings you back to the present moment. It kind of jolts you a little bit because your nervous system has to be like, oh, hey, what is this? And it gets you perhaps to come out of whatever sort of thoughts that you might be in into the present moment. And then, I'm not remembering, maybe Eva had brought up, or it might have been somebody else, like focusing on touching an object, doing something with your hands, having some sort of thing that you're doing, whether it be modeling clay, putty, knitting, anything, holding a fidget, holding a worry stone, all of those things, that can be a way to ground as well, because you're using one of your senses, touch, and coming to the moment to focus on whatever it is that you're holding and touching. Again, I'm going to give Laura a handout that I will send to you all, or that she can send to you all, with more of these, more strategies. So key takeaways from today, and I didn't put sleep on here. Okay, so I'm adding sleep. So trying to work on your sleep, focus on sleep. Sleep is amazing and really, really beneficial for you. Other key takeaways, your feelings are valid. You don't really control your feelings, but they're valid. Okay, what we do with them, how we respond to them, that's where we can choose to maybe work with them in a more healthy manner. But your feelings are valid. You're going through something incredibly difficult. Small moments of grounding matter. They add up. They can be helpful, even if it doesn't feel like that 1 minute did anything. Caring for yourself supports your caregiving. Say it one more time. Caring for yourself, taking care of your own health, actually supports your caregiving and can be one of the most important things you do as a caregiver. Yes, said it. Trauma is your body's response to the environment that you're living in. Is it everyone's response? No, but it is a physiologic response to an environment that you may be in, an environment of uncertainty, an environment of complete exhaustion, hypervigilance, all of those things. And that's something that's biological, not a weakness. Remember that you're doing something incredibly hard, and that also remember that you're not alone. Like, you showed up here, you took this time for yourself, and there is this community here, and hopefully other communities that you have. And another key takeaway, and something I just want to acknowledge again, is just I appreciate and am grateful to be invited to this group, and hope that any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer, and willing to stay in touch or things like that, if that's helpful at all. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I before we open up to some questions for the group, one, I just want to make sure everyone knows we are recording this session so that we can make it available to more people in our community. So keep that in mind in asking questions. Also keep in mind, Amy is a practicing doctor. We are not her patients, so there are limits to what she can speak to. And I just want to say, Amy, so when you were talking about especially the importance of sleep, it took me back to when we met. And when we met, Cole had had a surgery that was a revision of a surgery that had some complications. The revision was not good. And we were in the ICU. There was not a lot of information on how it was going to turn out. There was a good chance that Cole was not going to make it out of the ICU alive. And so in that moment, that was one, not the expected outcome of this repair surgery. Two, I'm in the ICU in another state by myself with my son. And my mom was there, but as far as support system, we were probably in the hardest point in our journey. We had been at it for a lot of years, and I had a lot of ideas on how I coped, but I had never been in a moment like that. And I had a very hard time sleeping, hard time dealing with the emotional state of what was going on, and had a conflict with one of the team, maybe used some not so nice language, and maybe referred to a resident as a resting bitch face resident, and got a little intervention. So Amy got to come into the situation, maybe with me not being in my best state and me not really wanting her to come in and make things better, right? I wanted my son to be better. So Amy was able to show up for me kind of in the worst time of my caregiving, and is a dear friend today because of the way that she was able to help me really do all of these things that she's talked about today. And the biggest being sleep, right? I was in an ICU on a couch with tons of machines, tons of stuff going on, just trying to keep my son alive, feeling like if I left his side, that would change. And Amy made it possible for me to sleep, for me to prioritize eating, for me to get eye masks and earphones so that I could actually make an effort to get sleep. In that time, after meeting Amy, I think, and sometimes I don't know, it's all kind of blurry, but the highlight of my day became breakfast, because I really liked the hospital breakfast routine. And my goal was to wake up at a certain time so that I could get my breakfast, get my coffee, and make the rounds, right? And if I did that, that was a good day, right? For me in that moment. She was able to give me so many resources and really affirm that it wasn't just my son that was going through something very hard. It was all of us, and that we all required a level of care that maybe we didn't have a ton of resources for. And so creating that toolbox for you that she talks about was so important for us in order to be able to endure some of the really hard things that we went through. So just in saying that, I just wanted to share a little bit about why Amy's wisdom was so important to us in this time, and why I strongly tell you that sleep thing is probably the most important, and also the most common thing we all sacrifice. Like, sleep goes out the door. We don't have time to sleep. We don't have time to eat. We have to take care of our loved one or ourselves or whatever. And none of those things are as possible or effective in the absence of that care. So does anyone want to ask a question of Amy? Crystal.
Hi. Thanks, Amy. I I very much am in the beginning of this, but I am not caring for a child. I'm helping my mom through it. And so, and she has a lot of support and caregivers in different roles. And I guess my question is, this group is amazing, but I feel like a lot of them are the decision makers where I'm the opposite and I'm looking as a caregiver to support whatever decisions my mom is making. And so I'm just any advice you have for, all of her caregivers, me, whatever, on kind of the opposite, of these aren't our decisions. How do we best support her decisions?
Yeah. And I mean, what a great question. And thank you for being here. And, how lucky your mom is to have all of these supportive people in her life, right? I think even though it is, the opposite or different, like you alluded to, it's still very much this place of uncertainty, this sense of loss of control, right? Like you're the child. And so, if you're the parent, you also have this loss of control because even if you're making the decisions, you're not controlling the outcomes, right? Like you do your best, but like you all are not in control. I wish that we had control. Our positions are in control, So I think there are so many parallels. And I think this place of having, and one thing I didn't necessarily talk about, but it's on my resource sheet, is having some self-compassion, showing certainly compassion and love and support for that person that you're caring for, whether it's a child, an adult, a friend, but also having some compassion with yourself that the emotions that you're feeling or trying to understand or accept decisions that others are making, even if maybe they weren't the decisions that you would make, trying to accept what is true, and not try to go through a lot of like what ifs or what ifs or what ifs. So focusing on what is, right? Mom made this decision, the physicians made this decision, this is where we are. And then having some compassion for yourself that, it is difficult. It is difficult to not have control. And it is difficult to not necessarily perhaps make decisions that you would like to make. And also understanding that the emotions that you're feeling are completely valid, right? And that's having some compassion. Like these emotions are valid. What I'm feeling is normal and valid. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Valerie?
Yeah, I'm just wondered if you had any suggestions or advice for dealing with other people. I noticed one of the categories there was social, and I find that I'm kind of isolating a little bit right now because I feel angry at the rest of the world. I mean, it's just, and people mean well, but I have found too that people come around and then people go away. I think sometimes people are afraid to hear anything negative, or they're not sure that they're going to say the right thing, and all of that, and that's fine. But I do feel like I've pulled in quite a bit, and I actually, I don't know. I just feel like people don't get it, and I don't know. I'm struggling with that right now. I understand why they don't get it, but it just feels like there's a real lack of knowledge and understanding about this in general, in our world, in our culture. People just want to hear happy, good stuff. And I don't know. Anything that you could say about that?
I could do a whole talk on that. I actually have a talk on that. I mean, yes. Like I bet if people's cameras were on, they'd be like, yeah, experience that, right? Thought I had friends, where are they? Thought I had these people, people want to give me advice and they have no idea what's going on. Or, they come and they go and that sort of thing. So yes, that is a huge thing. Couple of things that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. One is that, you mentioned something that's like people mean well, right? And well, first I'll start with you're like angry at the world. Valid, right? You have every right to be angry. Like, why is this happening to me? Why am I a kid? This is unfair. It's not okay. Like, I'm done with this. This sucks. I hate this. All valid, right? All there. So I think sometimes processing through some of that anger, writing, venting, talking into a note on your phone, writing it down, yelling, whatever you need to do to kind of try to process through some of that so that that level of intensity of the anger can go down a smidge can be really helpful. Venting to a therapist, whomever, whatever you can do, venting in the abyss, being in your car, whatever you need to do. I think that can be really helpful. Second thing is, you mentioned, people mean well, right? So I think that often that is true. I think people are well-meaning, but it is hard to focus on someone's intention versus their action or their delivery. But I think that that can be a useful tool for us when we encounter these social weirdness, right? These weird things, right? Like somebody saying, I don't know, something totally off-putting, and you're like, what the, right? Like, this is not helpful, right? So I think you can be like, their intention probably was to offer support, guidance, comfort, whatever, and I'm going to let that go, right? So then the other thing is, you get to choose, how much you can tolerate or who you really want to be around. And that's where that physical boundary thing comes in. And maybe sometimes you do feel like you need to isolate more, cocoon in, take care of yourself, be around safe people like this who may get it. Even if they've been through something a little different, they get it more than the ones who have never experienced it. And, I don't find that that is necessarily a problem or a clinical issue unless you're so isolated that then it impacts how you're functioning day to day. Okay. So that's kind of a highlight reel of that. But I think processing the strong feelings that are there, trying to focus on the intention of what people are coming with and letting the rest go, setting the boundary of being like, I'm going to choose, like, I don't actually want to go to that social function because, like, I don't want people looking at me with sad eyes or avoiding me because they don't want to hear. No. The other thing is, I think, use your voice to ask for what you need or what you want, because you're exactly right. People have no idea what to do. People have no idea what to do just in like every day in our culture when someone passes away or someone dies. Like, they act like we aren't all gonna die. Like, it's a human condition. Like, we are all going to do it, but people think like they have no idea what to do. And I'm like, well, you show up, you ask, you provide support, you can do tangible things, you acknowledge, you continue to love, right? Like, you honor. But I think, our culture kind of just doesn't know what to do. And I think this is somewhat similar, but I think you could ask, hey, such and such, how 2 months ago you said you could do something? Yes. Can you pick up the dry cleaning? Yes. Can you run to the pharmacy? Yes. Can you do this? And then, they either show up or they don't. And then you have gotten some data on like, all right, well, not the best for me or not right now. Right. So those are a couple things that I would think about.
Can I just say on that also, for me, there was a lot of time I spent trying to, like, I don't know, I'm an analogy girl, and this experience and what we went through kind of squared me off in a way that I no longer fit in the round holes. And instead of going through my life, like trying to shove myself into round holes again, trying to hang around with all the round pegs and feeling like crap about myself because I'm squared now, I have found places and ways where I found square holes. I found other squared off people. And those are places that are now safe for me to exist in, where I can also hold space for who I am today.
Absolutely.
And I personally today am no longer expecting myself to go back to being a round peg.
Well said, Laura.
Great analogy. Absolutely. And I think that your support groups and your friendships, like I have a 9, almost 10-year-old, and I talk about like seasons of social support, seasons of friendship. Like, sometimes people can meet our needs in certain seasons of our lives. And then during other seasons, we find other people, hopefully, right? If we're blessed enough, like we find these other people. And then, you know, sometimes those other people from back there that season come back around. Sometimes they don't. And like, it is okay, right? It is okay. It is a normative process of these seasons and how we evolve and grow and change as people.
And there may be different people. One of the things you said, and it's like finding people, trusted people for support, and not every trusted person can be every level of support, right? So for me, it took me back to when Cole was in the ICU in Charlotte. My good friend, he and I can talk about anything under the sun. Now, was he the one that was like online with me researching cancer? He barely can pronounce these words that I'm saying. He doesn't know anything about the medical stuff. But I could go out on the phone with him and take my walk around the courtyard and really just emote and be angry. Like, he was my angry person. He was my this shit isn't fair person, right? He was the person that I didn't have to say hope always to, right? And so like having that person, even though that hope always isn't something I had to do, it's something I chose to, but I still needed to have that person that I could break down to, right? And that person didn't show up for me in a lot of ways that I would have maybe wanted him to, but he showed up in the way that he could, and that was important for me in that time. Anyone else have a question or comment?
I think you said it very well, Laura, about the square pegs and the holes and all that. Because I'm going through the cancer. I'm not a caretaker. But I just, you know, where do I fit now in society with my friends? And I'm left out of events, and I get the weird looks, and you know, I have, you know, so I finally invested in a wig, and it made a huge difference. And I reinvented myself. I'm like, you know what? The old D is dead. This is the new me. You know, just kind of doing different self-care things, and just to make me feel good and feel like a woman again, and not look like a little old boy or, you know, something. And so it's important for the self-care, and also socially, you know, we've had a lot of people that stepped away because they just don't know what to do. They're afraid. And I don't have the energy to support them because I need my own support. So I find it interesting that people that we knew way back kind of stepped away, where people that we had just met in the past couple of years, they're with us shotgun. And it's amazing, like seasonal friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then just with social media, I have taken down 900 people down to 300 friends on Facebook. Like, do I really need all these people? They, you know, if I haven't spoken to them in a year or two, you know, and they dislike or this or that, nobody called me or nobody actually reached out or whatever, they're done. And then also the text messages with the, you know, everyone's trying to cure you on TikTok with videos. Oh, try this, try that. No, I don't want someone that never went through cancer thinking that they can cure me. And then they're sending me something for brain cancer, which is not desmoplastic. And that's the biggest thing. People don't understand. Every cancer is so different. Even within our group, we're so different, you know, because it's genetic. We're all genetically different. So what I'm doing is different from what other people are doing, and vice versa. So we all have to kind of, you know, we have to be patient and respect. And in the beginning, I was very agitated with people when they were sending me things for brain cancer or breast cancer, and, oh, take this, they were cured, you know, stage 4. You know, stage 4 can have an umbrella of 100 different cancers. So it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So
And kudos, I mean, I think this is like a wonderful illustration of you prioritizing yourself, right? And at the end of the day, that is what we have that we can that we can control, right? Like, I can choose who I'm going to be around. I can choose what you know, hopefully, right? Like, what I put in my body to fuel myself. I can choose to move my body. I can choose to sit by my loved one and be present with them. And, you know, that is what we can control, and the other stuff and the other people and what they're going to do, we don't control. And we can let them do what they're going to do, and we can do what we can control, which is really
Set up
important.
a circle, and
Absolutely.
then keep,
Yeah,
set up a circle, and you just can keep everybody in the circle or out of the circle.
Mhm.
And that's it. And that's because it's your life, and they're not gonna be there for you in ICU making decisions, helping you with the doctors and all that. So
Thank
Thank
you Lee, for sharing.
Heather?
I can't hear you.
I had to unmute.
There you go. No problem.
So Hunter had to go to bed, but he told me something while we were off camera and listening to all of the things that I hadn't heard him really say before. And Amy, just to let you know, Hunter right now he's my 24-year-old son. He's no evidence of disease right now. So we're at a little bit of a different place. But he had his brother and him went somewhere, and his brother said, "Did you tell so-and-so about your cancer?" And Hunter said, "No, because I don't want to be Hunter with cancer." Sorry, I do this.
Please don't apologize.
So, I wish that we'd have been probably more aware of that when we were more in the middle of all of the things, because I feel like he's just now getting a chance to step back. And he said he finds it hard to give himself permission to live, to go do things. And so I just thought I would share.
So I want to let you know that it's wonderful that he said that to you and shared, and that obviously means that he feels comfortable sharing things with you, right? So that he feels welcome and warm, and that he has support there with you. Okay. The other thing is, it's not ever too late to acknowledge the emotional impact of all of this, and it's never too late to engage in a conversation about, man, wish I kind of would have known about this and we could have talked about it then, but I'm here now, right? And I'm interested in whatever you want to share, whenever you want to share it. And I'm here, right? And a 24-year-old male gets to decide how much he wants to share about that with with his mom and when and whatever. But it's not ever too late to come back around to that. I think about this concept of repair all the time. People look at me and they're like, "Oh, wow, you're a pediatric psychologist. You must be like a great mom. You know exactly what to do." I'm like, "Oh man, my children do not get Dr. Amy. They get Amy. They get mom. But when I lose my cool, or I don't address things, or I do things that I wish when I go back I could have done differently, I come back around and I say, man, I wish I would have handled that differently. Mom's working on that, or like we're all working on something." And I do it that way. And I think that that's such a great thing to think about, and show up with in all of our relationships, but certainly in one with, parenting.
I also want to echo that I just think it's really powerful that he shared that with you. And I think it's, a very common thing. Even Cole was diagnosed in kindergarten. So it was very important to me as he was becoming a teenager, that he had some other identity, that he didn't want this. Nobody here, especially the patients, wanted this identity, right? And we were blessed with so much support from an early time, that maybe there was a part of me, especially in the early years, that felt like an obligation to be public with information, because people were so kind to us and giving to us. And I had to learn for myself, and this is like in setting that boundary of what is an acceptable, safe boundary for you, right? For me, I had to evaluate some safe and acceptable boundaries for how I allow people to interact with us in our journey. and maybe didn't have some of those boundaries in the earlier stages. But I just really wanted to call out the fact that, and I've said before, giving support, this is a two-way street, right? So even though they want to help you and they're doing something for you, they are doing that because there is something that they receive from that, whether it's because they love you and they want to feel like they're doing something, whether it's because they want to feel like a good person that did something for someone going through something hard, right? There's always a two-way street. They're not just giving to you and not getting something in return from that. And so you don't owe people for the support that they show you. You certainly don't owe them a lack of boundaries or access, certain amount of access. And so, and I say this in the same way, like, everybody says, I so appreciate you doing this. You all know that I'm doing this as much for me and for Cole as for all of you, right? It is not a one-way street. Giving is a two-way street, right? And thank God, because there's so much good that can come from that. But I think it's really important to create space for that reality so that you do have room to make those boundaries. And I think you, like Amii said, taking it back to Hunter, if Hunter is expressing something like this, right, that maybe it's new, he didn't express this before, and you need to talk about it, or he needs to think about it, or you need to process it. But the important thing is like creating this space. Like today, space exists for this to be true for him. And I feel like that's the most we can do, and Amii today is creating space for us to talk about the really hard emotional side of this that is there whether we make space for it or not, right? Does anyone else want to comment to Amii or ask a question? Amii,
I think I'm going to speak on it. I'm going to.
Marisa, go ahead.
I'm gonna speak on the fact that I am the caregiver to my husband. So I'm obviously different than everyone. For me, I think the hardest thing, so we're at the beginning, middle of our treatments. My husband just had his first round of a set of 3 surgeries, close to 20 hours long total, open for 15. He, what I'm struggling with, and I think that I'm struggling to like accept, well, I'm a little bit of a control freak, number one, but number two, the mental instability of my husband post-surgery. Like, I feel like they took, the best way I can describe it is they took half of the cancer when they went in and they took half that cancer, they took half of him. Like, he is no longer mentally him. And I get it. Like, I get that, like, that's a long surgery. It's trauma. A brain can only comprehend so much. He will eventually come back, I do believe. But I was not mentally, emotionally prepared for that. So, and I don't think that very many people talk about that because, trust me, I've looked high and low for that answer. Can't find it. Can't find it. But that is my struggle.
Yes. I mean, thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing with us. I have some thoughts, and one thought I do want to comment on and reframe a bit, because a couple of you have talked about being in this community and also being different. I think we are all different, even if we're caring for a child, all of our children and their needs and their cancers, even if it's under the same umbrella, right? Like we mentioned, are different, but we have so much more similarities than we do differences. And I, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with that. And I think that what you're speaking to is almost this loss and this bit of grief that you weren't prepared for. Not in like this physical sense of loss, but in the loss of your husband, the relationship, the companionship, the husband that you knew, your communication, whatever. And that's grief, that's loss. And so processing that or trying to grieve as a verb is important to help you to just keep showing up and taking steps and being present, but acknowledging that deserves grieving, in whatever way that you need to do that, depending on the moment.
I just want to add too that when she says grieving, I heard you say, I believe that he's going to come back. And so when you grieve something, that doesn't mean I'm going to stop believing it's coming back. That means I'm going to acknowledge the size and depth of the loss that I'm feeling right now, because in this moment today, it is loss. When it comes back, it won't be, right? And I pray that happens, but it's okay to grieve what you've lost in the present moment, even if you hope that it comes back.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's really important, Laura. Thank you for sharing.
Anyone else want to jump in? I know we've had you for about a little over an hour now, Amii, so I think we're running out of the time that you've allotted us, but I am so grateful. It means so much to me that you would take the time to share with us, and I